Time to teach you about trapezoids. Okay, so a trapezoid has a few parts. Well, a trapezoid really is a four-sided shape, a quadrilateral with just one pair of parallel sides. So this pair, so let's put an arrow here and one arrow here saying that this side is parallel to this side. Unlike the parallelogram where both opposite sides are parallel, only one set of opposite sides are parallel. And these parallel sides are called bases. If you notice, these bases aren't the same length, so we'll call this one base 1 and we'll call this one base 2. Okay, so this isn't an exponent, this is just base number 2, okay, base sub 2. So here's base 1 and here's base 2. They're two different bases because they're different lengths, but they're parallel to each other. They'll never touch. And these sides right here are called legs. So you could call this L1 and you could call this one L2. Okay, so that's basically what a trapezoid is. Just one pair of opposite sides that are parallel, and those opposite sides are called bases. Now let's move on to how to find the area of a trapezoid. So let's get this first trapezoid right here. Now, if you remember, in the video of parallelograms, we simplified the parallelogram and it ended up turning into a rectangle, and that helped us out because we already knew what the area of a rectangle was. It was base times height. Maybe we could do that with this trapezoid. Well, I'm going to take this first trapezoid. I'm just going to call this base 1. And I'm going to call this base 2. And I'm not going to cut it up. I'm not going to perform surgery like we did with a parallelogram. I'm actually going to make it, I'm going to double it. I'm going to make it twice as big. So I'm going to take this exact same, this congruent trapezoid, and I'm going to label this base 1 and base 2 also because they're exactly the same. They're congruent. And what does doubling have to do? Well, how is doubling going to help us find the area of a trapezoid? Well, let's look at this. Maybe we can make it into a shape that we're familiar with. I'm going to take the second trapezoid and I'm going to rotate it. And what did it just create? A parallelogram. Do we know what the formula for the area of a parallelogram is? Yes, and that's going to help us find the area of a trapezoid. Okay, so what's the area of a parallelogram? It is base times height. And let's look at this parallelogram. So let's just focus that this is one large parallelogram. What is our base? What's the length of the base of this parallelogram? Well, wouldn't it be B1 plus B2? So for this specific parallelogram, it would be B1 plus B2, right? The length of this entire thing right here is B1 plus B2, and the height would be this line right here that's perpendicular to that. So B1 plus B2 times H would be the area of this entire parallelogram. Yeah? Okay? If you need to rewind that, go ahead, rewind it. But just quickly, so the area of this parallelogram is base times height. Of any parallelogram is base times height. Specifically for this parallelogram, our base is B1 plus B2 times the height will give us the area of this entire parallelogram. That's how many squares would fit inside. However, we only want to find the area of one, okay, of these trapezoids. Remember, our goal was to find the area of a trapezoid, not a parallelogram. So what do we do with this formula to find just the area of this one trapezoid? Well, remember, we've got two trapezoids to make a parallelogram, but we only want the area of one trapezoid. So let's take this formula and let's divide it by 2, because we only need one trapezoid. So there you go. Here's the area of a trapezoid. Area of a trapezoid. Oops, I totally spelled it wrong. Trapezoid is base 1 plus base 2 times the height. So this part right here, that numerator, is the area of a parallelogram, because parallelogram is base times height. But remember, a trapezoid is just half of a parallelogram, so we divided it by 2. So get your highlighters. Highlight area of a trapezoid. Hopefully you spelled it correctly. And it's base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2, because a trapezoid is half of a parallelogram. All right, there you go. Now let's use this formula to find the area of some examples. Here's our first example. Find the area of this trapezoid. So remember, formula for the area of a trapezoid is A is equal to base 1 plus base 2, put the parentheses there, okay, and times the height, and divided by 2, because the trapezoid is half of a parallelogram. So let's find our two bases, the two sides that are parallel to each other, and substitute. So base 1 is 5.1 plus 1.7, and what side is perpendicular to the two bases, makes a square, is 3, and divided by 2, because it's half of a parallelogram. Now let's take our calculators. That's right, or type 5.1 plus 1.7 times 3 divided by 2, which is 10.2. There's our final answer. So 10.2 inches squared. So remember, it's how many squares fit inside. So there will be just a little more than 10.2 inches squared, 10.2 squares that fit inside of this trapezoid. Okay? All right, let's do the next example. All right, so find the area of this trapezoid. These two lines are parallel. Here's our height. So B1 plus B2 times H divided by 2. Press pause, put this in your notebooks. And yeah, let's substitute. So one of our bases is 10.2 plus the other base, which is 3, times the height, which is coincidentally the same length as one of the bases. So this side is perpendicular, and divided by 2. Trapezoid, half of a parallelogram. Let's get our calculators. Let's start typing. Make sure you type in the correct numbers. So 10.2 plus 3 times 3 divided by 2, which is 19.8 inches squared. So there's our final answer. Almost 20 squares fit in here. So just 19 and then a smaller square, 0.8 of a square, fits inside of this trapezoid. All right, now let's put this in our notebooks. Find the missing measurement. So this one's a little different. This time they give us the area, and they want us to find this right here. So it's the same thing. So remember, the formula for the area of a trapezoid: A is equal to B1 plus B2 times H divided by 2. Remember, that height is perpendicular to the two bases. So let's substitute some numbers in. Area, they give us the area, which is 26.5, is equal to one of the bases, 7.7, plus the other base, 2.9. You could have written in 2.9 plus 7.7, doesn't matter. What's the height? Which one is perpendicular to both of these bases? Question mark. So let's put question mark right there, and let's divide it by 2. All right, so there's a couple ways to get question mark by itself. One thing I like to do is, well, we have a fraction on this side. Let's make this into a fraction. Let's put a 1 under here to make it into a fraction. So it looks like we have a proportion. We have a fraction equals another fraction, or a ratio that equals another ratio. How do we solve proportions? Let's cross multiply. Okay, so 2 times 26.5. 26.5 times 2 is 53, is equal to, so this times this, let's use our red pens, or green pens, so 2 times that is 53, and then 1 times that is just that, which is 7.7 plus 2.9 times question mark. Okay, now let's do what's inside of the parentheses. 7.7 plus 2.9, which is 10.6, times question mark equals 53. All right, and the last step, 10.6 times question mark. Opposite of multiplication is division. And so our final answer would be 53 divided by 10.6 is, hey, look at that, 5. So question mark, our height is equal to 5 what? Inches. And that's it. So find the missing measurements. You just substitute what you have and then do some algebra to get what you don't have. Okay, so let's do one more example. Find the missing measurements. All right, so area. I would always write down the formula so we don't forget. Base 1 plus base 2 times the height. So this right here is the area of a parallelogram. Trapezoid is half of a parallelogram. That's why we divide it by 2. And let's substitute what we have. Area is 56.8 is equal to base 1. What's one of our bases? Question mark. Plus base 2, which is 9.6. Don't forget to put the parentheses. Times the height, which is not 8.5, but which is the line that is perpendicular to the two bases, which is 8, divided by 2. All right, so let's do some work. So there's there's different ways that you can do this, but with this we have a fraction. Let's make this into a fraction, and let's cross multiply. Okay, this was just one way. If you have a different way, and that's fine. So let's cross multiply. So 2 times 56.8 is 113.6. Hopefully I pressed the right numbers. Yep. Is equal to 1 times all of this is just all of this. Question mark plus 9.6 times 8. Okay, what do we do with that? From your algebra days, you might be tempted to distribute that, but let's not. Let's do this. Remember, distributing is just multiplication. What's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So let's get rid of this 8 by dividing it on both sides. Okay, so these 8s cancel each other out. And let's get our calculators. 113.6 divided by 8 is 14.2 is equal to question mark plus 9.6. And look at that. So look how simple that is. Last step, divide, or not divide, subtract both sides by 9.6. The opposite of positive 9.6 is negative 9.6. Let's get our calculators. 14.2 minus 9.6 is 4.6. There we go. 4.6. So question mark, which is one of the bases, is 4.6 yards. Not yards squared, because we were trying to find the length. So just 4.6 yards. All right, that is how to find the area of a trapezoid. Remember, a trapezoid is really half of a parallelogram. If you can find the area of that parallelogram, like we did here, base 1 plus base 2 times the height, then cut that in half, you'd have the area of a trapezoid. All right, hope that helps. Have a great day.